Hey everybody, what is going on? I am MAXX and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Sam Kieth Day, and that's why we're looking at the next issue in his The MAXX series from the early 90s. This is the MAXX issue 10, August 1994. Just want to say this is probably in and around the last issue I bought originally as a kid. I dropped off at some point. I think I mentioned before that, just at that age, don't think I was mature enough to kind of get into the stuff. And the story matter that the MAXX was starting to cover in these later issues. I was obviously more interested in the big, bulky, kind of goofy character. The MAXX looked kind of cool, and the adventures in the Outback. And the book started focusing less on the MAXX and more on the secondary characters, right? Which is fine. I mean, it's Sam Kieth's book. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it. Just at that time when I was 13 years old, that's just not what was interesting me about comics, Image Comics in general, more specifically the MAXX. As you'll see in this issue, the MAXX appears for about one page, I think. So he really has become a secondary character in his own title. Cover here kind of explains it as well. Maybe one of the first covers, I think there might have been another one before this, but where the MAXX does not figure prominently on the cover. Not that this is a bad cover. I think it's great. It's kind of a mixed medium paint, pencil. I'm not exactly sure what's in there. Maybe some charcoal. Painted artwork, we'll call it, from Sam Kieth, which I think looks great. And it's a very striking kind of looking character, especially with that yellow hat and that yellow, I'm going to assume it's like a dashiki, like Dom DeLuise or something, if you know who that is and that understand that reference. But that's pretty much all I got to say about the cover. The big, huge, French mustache is hilarious. And we're going to open her up and have a look at the weirdness inside the MAXX number 10. So, story and art by Sam Kieth, dialogue Bill Messner-Loebs, finishes Jim Sinclair, so he's kind of like, I've mentioned before, the assistant. Lettering Mike Heisler, and colors Steve Oliff in all the optics. Nothing's changed, pretty much the same creative team all the way throughout up to this point. And, I'll talk mostly about layouts, I think, and a bit of storytelling and stuff, because again, this is a pretty mundane story in as far as a superhero comic, which the MAXX just basically isn't anymore. But there's still some graphic stuff that's super interesting, right? The kind of repetition of panels is pretty rare for Sam Kieth, other than when he's doing stats, but where there's a bit of variation from panel to panel where the character's doing something and moving around and stuff. And I think that sequence is very well done. The body language of it and the posture, I think, is great. I like this in the way he integrates lettering and interesting borders and stuff. This is a good example of it, where the title's inside the border has an interesting shape, and you get a cool kind of close-up of what Julie's doing and Sarah in the background, then to pull away to show what she's doing. So some good camera work, I guess, on this one. It's a pretty subdued Sam Kieth page generally, and compared to other pages we'll see in this book as well. So this use of negative space, I think, is very interesting, and we don't know exactly what's going on here, because last issue, Mr. Gone's head was revealed, the head that's cut off, and now all of a sudden we're with his doctor, and I guess he's sewing it back onto his body or something. And again, since the negative space, interesting use of it, as I said, but it doesn't tell us what the setting is. We're kind of asking questions, which is normal in a Sam Kieth comic. A bit of surrealism, I guess, thrown in there, and keeping a bit of mystery as to what's actually going on with Mr. Gone. And then we get to this beautiful kind of, late 1800s, Victorian age inspired poster art. That's what it looks like to me, like those old Victorian French art, Parisian art, decorative elements, ornamentation. I mean, which Sam Kieth already does, so maybe he gets already inspiration from that, but this one seems a bit more with the lettering and stuff as inspired by that particular art movement. Again, I like his funky clothes. The way he's chosen to dress him here is very interesting. The big curly mustache. And okay, now I can see that that's basically like a yellow polka dot suit. Yeah, just a very striking look for Mr. Gone. As opposed to his other look with the cape, right? So both looks pretty striking. And all of a sudden now what we have is basically Julie's backstory. As she's a little girl, so some interesting things happening with the art is where, I assume it still, to me, resembles Sam Kieth and what he chooses to draw. And some of the hatching and stuff here. So I feel like Sam Kieth did this kind of naive, childlike artwork, right? So obviously what he's trying to do is reproduce how a child draws. And you've got some light boxing of buildings. I guess that's in San Francisco, possibly. And her room back here that you can see, which is pretty detailed actually. So for such a limited space for background elements, you get a lot of information. So very clever there too, and drawn in more of a Sam Keith kind of realistic style. And I do, well, somewhat realistic, and I do feel like some of this was done by his assistant as well, which is fine. Integrating like her dad, my daddy draws buildings, so you got to assume he's like an architect, right? So she shows this, and maybe that's why how he explains the link. He draws the insides of office buildings downtown. This will be the lobby of the Dexter Balsco something building. It will be beautiful if it ever gets built. So I feel like maybe when she was a kid, Julie, her dad was drawing up this building. They did eventually build it, and somehow she was able to live in the penthouse, right? Because it does. I'm pretty sure that is Julie's building that we're seeing there. And her dad's an architect, so that's why you see kind of, you know, they've superimposed some sort of floor plan of a building or a house or something, and showing her dad in the studio. And what's interesting is, hopefully on the camera you can see this clear enough where like there's a childlike dad that's drawn over top with like a marker, probably, right? Like a child Prismacolor, whatever those markers were we had as kids. I forget the brand, but and underneath there's a Sam Keith style man sitting at a drawing table. It's, you know, all pretty well, fairly realistic, in its depiction of his office and paper everywhere and tools he uses, right? So nice bit of mixed media all through this page here. And this is the lobby, I guess, that she's talking about that's actually painted. So yeah, Sam Keith is really trying different levels of drawing, different mediums of drawing in this issue. So that to me is very interesting. If the story, again, when I was a kid, was wearing thin on me. Now with my adult eyes, I can appreciate more kind of the different stuff he's doing with the art. Another more kind of manic Sam Keith page. This was pulling back on the detail, but is doing some more interesting, strange layouts. Again, kind of in between his regular style with less detail and the childlike kind of feel that he had earlier, kind of going in between, right? Like back and forth. Here he literally goes from childlike to, you know, representational in the Sam Keith style. And this is kind of a bit of foretelling of what's going to happen, where, you know, there's a bug in the house and they don't want to kill it, and mom comes in and just kind of crunches it, right? So they don't know really what to think about that. And what happens in this story is that back to the childlike drawings, which is good because it's the depiction of a bunny that, you know, I guess a car drove over its leg and its leg was cut off or something. So, you know, it helps that the fact that it's kind of a naive childlike drawing, to not gross us out as much, or it hit us emotionally too much, right? I guess that's the choice he made, to kind of almost censoring himself in a way. And again, we're seeing it from her perspective too, right? So the childlike drawings kind of persist. And I'm going to say, I think a lot of this issue was drawn by Sam Keith and very little was done by his assistant. I'll point out those instances. We saw one earlier and there's a bit later, but really Sam Keith, I think, did most of the work on this issue. I, you know, obviously could be wrong, but a lot of it feels like his, even when he pulls back on the detail, the hatching and stuff, a lot of it feels like his line. For example, like this whole page here. I'd be very surprised if the assistant helped out here. Maybe with the car, maybe. So she keeps the bunny under her bed here, and eventually, you know, it's making noise and stuff. We get back to the present with Sarah and Julie in the apartment here. We get a shot of the Izzes just kind of goofing off here. And then once we get back to the past with Julie's parents, they hear the bunny making all that noise there, and you got kind of a weird, interesting representation of that down here, a little bit more realistic and kind of, I guess you would say, decoratively kind of referring to the paw and the leg and the injured rabbit, right? The fact that all of this is red. So the noise is keeping the parents up, and they go in the room and they find the bunny, right? The father takes it away with the mother, right? We get a bit of the MAXX. This is the page I was telling you about, the one page he's in. So, you know, Julie's moving out, so I guess he's helping her here move some boxes out. And that's all really we get in this issue for the MAXX. I don't know if Sam Keith's going to keep doing that, but he started kind of just even painting his feet purple, right? So I don't know if you could call this like a new costume or revision or something. That was very popular with a lot of the Image characters, right? New look. I guess he just got tired of having to use another color on the boots, and it's just quicker and more efficient to do that. I don't know if that stayed, that look. We'll pay attention as we go through the next issues. Okay, so here's another thing that I think the assistant did, and this is kind of a light boxed image of some houses in San Francisco, but then we're right back to Sam Keith here, and they're trying to, explain, they explain how the vet couldn't do anything, how the bunny just had to wait in the garage till God came for him. They tell me death is a natural part of life. So trying to get her to understand that the bunny's going to die, right? And obviously not happy about it, talking about it with her dad. And then we get to this sequence where the mother finally, gets up, goes to the garage, and mother basically takes the shovel to the bunny and kills the bunny, puts it out of its misery, really. I guess it's a comment on morality, right? I could imagine Sarah thinking her mom's evil for doing that, but as adults we realize that sometimes, life's not so clear-cut, black and white, and in this case, I guess you could call it a mercy killing. There's not much you could have done for the rabbit, but just let it die, which, it was suffering. So, both sides of that argument, not a fun situation to be in. Those are the situations in life where, that's where, moral ambiguity, I guess, plays its part. I like the transition here. I'll just come back to, this simple kind of silhouette page which frames the characters very well, and then still within that frame, little Julie there, and now drawn more, again, realistically, or at least, representationally, as opposed to the naive style, almost as if she's kind of, had to grow up a little bit and learn something here. And here he dips back into the painted artwork, kind of monochrome. I think all of this looks great. And like I said, very little assists in this issue. I think this is probably, closer to what Sam Keith really wants to do generally, more so than the first issues of the MAXX. That's kind of what I'm realizing with this series, right? And he's talked about it. I've read some interviews where, maybe when he originally started the MAXX, he was just kind of trying to please, in a way, the Image audience and the Image guys, do a kind of character like that, even if it was already weird and in his own kind of Sam Keith way. He's really coming into his own, I guess, getting confident in his storytelling and really veering towards what he really wants to do. I do feel like the fact that he's using and experimenting and using all these different materials and trying cool stuff, he's really putting thought and work into it. So it's something that probably pleases him more than, having the MAXX fight big monsters in the outback. If this issue is any indication, that would be my guess. The fact that there's just one page of them and the rest really focuses mostly on Julie and a bit on Sarah and secondary characters. And just a little link to Julie's past here. Sarah asked her, I suppose you're keeping this old rusty shovel too? So is it the actual shovel her mom used on the rabbit? It's never said for sure. It could be, or maybe it isn't, but it still kind of represents that in a weird way. It represents the past. And she says, no, Sarah, throw it out, right? So kind of Julie maybe symbolically indicating, she's leaving the past behind and moving on from some of those childhood traumatisms. So there you go. That was issue 10. Something interesting I saw, it was always fun in the MAXX that they print up fan art, but pay special attention to this one because his name is Bill, it's either Moss or Mouse, okay? Bill Moss, I think, Virginia Beach. I'm going to assume Virginia. I'm not American, but I think so. Bill Moss actually did a lot of parody comics, parodying a lot of the Image books. So the fact that he was, his artwork was printed in there as a fan, does that mean that Sam Keith was not aware of him actually being, printed up in comics and stuff, or he didn't care? But it's fun to see him there, not against it. Ooh, that pit ad. Oh, here's an interesting one. Boof, right? It was one of the rare spin-offs, not like Spawn related specifically from Todd McFarlane Productions. I kind of enjoyed John Cleary. I think he was one of the better kind of McFarlane clones, right? Back then, he was very young when he did this. He was like 16, 17 or something like that. Very, very young. I recently rediscovered him on Facebook, and his artwork is completely different. Super awesome. I think he's working in 3D modeling or video games or sculpting. I could be wrong on this, so look him up. John Cleary. You can find him on Google or on Facebook or something like that. Maybe more than likely Instagram as well, if you're interested. And I wasn't sure if it was him, so I actually wrote to him, and he did confirm that he was the same John Cleary who had worked on Boof and Satan 6 back in the day, which is a Jack Kirby comic book that he drew. Didn't do much back then, eventually kind of disappeared, and then, like I said, I just found out that he's doing sculpting and 3D video game stuff. Anyways, you go check his page out. He's got some really awesome artwork there. And this last one, thrown in the whole page, colored by Elf. The name sounds kind of familiar, where I think there were a few pinups going around in the early 90s in some books from this guy. Looks pretty cool. I think it's airbrushed. And again, just an interesting take on the MAXX, just very different, where the head is just very, very small. Even though the MAXX's proportions are already very weird, this almost makes it weirder. You'd think the teeth would be bigger or anything, but like, again, it's an interesting take. It's different, so I do kind of enjoy it. And that is it. So that ends our review of the MAXX issue 10. If you have any answers to my questions or any interesting tidbits about this issue or Sam Kieth, let me know in the comments. If you're already subscribed and you're still following, thank you. I really appreciate your support. If you're not subscribed yet, please do so below. It's really quick and easy for you, and it helps out the channel. It helps get us out there to like-minded people who are into the same stuff, comic books and, mixed media that we are, and I want to hope that everyone out there has a great day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.